The letter was never meant to be opened again. Thomas Grayson had sealed it in July of 1968, slid it into a wooden cigar box, and buried it beneath old Christmas ornaments and army photographs. He told himself it was for the best. Some words were kinder unsaid. 50 years later, at 78 years old, Thomas found the box again. The envelope was still sealed, still addressed in careful blue ink. Clara Bennett, Cedar Hollow, Ohio. He ran his thumb over her name until it blurred. And for the first time in his life, Thomas wondered if silence had cost him more than speaking ever would have. In the summer of 1967, Cedar Hollow was the kind of town where everyone knew when the high school band practiced and whose tomatoes were ripening early. Thomas worked at his father's gas station on Main Street. Clara Bennett worked across the road at Mayfield's diner. She tied her hair back with a ribbon that matched the day's uniform, blue on weekdays, red on Sundays. Thomas noticed her laugh first, not loud, just bright, like something that didn't belong to worry. He started stopping by the diner every Friday after closing the station. One milkshake became 2 straws became long walks home, long walks became promises. They weren't dramatic people. They didn't talk about forever like it was guaranteed. But Thomas bought her a yellow carnation every week. Not roses. Roses felt like pressure. Carnations felt hopeful. Clara pressed each one into a book she kept beside her bed. In April of 1968, Thomas received his draft notice. Vietnam. He read it twice before walking across the street to the diner. Clara knew the moment she saw his face. She didn't cry loudly. She just reached for his hand and held it like she could anchor him to the booth. The night before he left, she gave him a photograph of them standing outside. Mayfield's on the back, she wrote. Come back to me. He promised he would. War doesn't always leave visible scars. Sometimes it rearranges the inside of a man. Thomas came home in 1970 thinner and quieter. The town threw a small welcome-back gathering. Clara was there in a blue ribbon. She hugged him tight. He held her, but stiffly. Loud noises made him flinch. Sleep didn't come easily. Sometimes he woke up gripping the edge of the mattress, heart racing. Clara tried to understand. She brought him coffee when he couldn't sleep, sat with him on the porch when he didn't want to talk. But Thomas believed something dangerous. That love required him to be whole. And he didn't feel whole. One night at the diner, a car backfired outside. Thomas dropped to the floor before he could think. Plates shattered. Voices froze. Clara rushed to him. It's okay, she whispered, but he pulled away. The look in her eyes wasn't fear, it was heartbreak. That moment lived inside him. He started staying later at the station, stopped buying carnations, stopped walking her home. Clara asked once softly, "Are you pushing me away?" He said no, but he was. In July 1968, Thomas sat at his kitchen table and wrote her a letter. He told her she deserved someone steady, someone who didn't wake up shouting, someone who didn't carry ghosts to dinner. He told her he loved her enough to let her go. He sealed it, addressed it, walked halfway to the mailbox, and turned back, because if he mailed it, it would be real. So instead of sending the letter, he did something worse. He disappeared slowly, stopped showing up, stopped calling, let silence do the breaking. 3 months later, Clara left Cedar Hollow. No goodbye, just gone. A year after that, Thomas met Margaret. Margaret was gentle in a way that didn't demand explanations. She didn't press him about the war, didn't ask about the quiet spaces. She simply filled them with patience. He married her, built a life, raised a son named David. Margaret knew about Clara, not in detail, just enough to understand there had been someone before. They were married 46 years. When Margaret passed away one winter morning, the house changed shape. It felt larger, colder, too still. David tried to help, but Thomas had never been a man of many words. Grief made him even quieter. After the funeral, David said something that landed harder than he expected. "You don't talk about anything, Dad. Not Mom, not the war, not anything." Thomas answered the way he always had, by shutting down. David left that afternoon frustrated. They hadn't spoken much since. Now standing in the attic at 78, holding the letter he never mailed, Thomas realized silence had been his lifelong habit, and it had cost him twice. He opened the envelope carefully. The paper had yellowed, but the ink was clear. Every word still carried the weight of a young man who thought distance was protection. Halfway through reading it, Thomas felt something unexpected. Not shame, clarity. He folded the letter and put it in his jacket pocket. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He He drove to Mayfield's diner. It had new owners, fresh paint. But the booths were still red vinyl. He asked the waitress if she knew Clara Bennett. She didn't. But an older man at the counter did. Clara? She moved to Columbus, married a schoolteacher, had a daughter, husband, passed about 10 years ago. Thomas swallowed. Does she ever come back? The man nodded. Visits her sister every fall. Gets here tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow? Thomas hadn't felt nervous like that in decades. He arrived at the diner early the next morning, ordered coffee he didn't drink at 9:17 a.m. The door chimed. Clara walked in, smaller, hair silver, but unmistakable. She saw him immediately, stopped mid-step. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she walked toward him. "Well," she said quietly, "I didn't expect to see you again." Her voice was steady, but careful. Thomas stood. "I never mailed it," he said, pulling the envelope from his jacket. She looked at it, then at him. "I waited," she said softly, "for a long time." The words landed heavier than anger would have. She opened the letter and read. When she finished, she folded it slowly. "You thought you were protecting me," she said. "I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't right. I didn't need perfect," she replied. "I needed honest." He looked down at the table. "I was afraid you'd see I wasn't the same man." She met his eyes. "I knew you weren't. I just didn't think that meant you'd leave." There it was. The truth he had avoided for 50 years. "I was 20, he said quietly, "and I didn't know how to be broken in front of someone." They talked for nearly 2 hours about the war, about Margaret, about Daniel, Clara's husband, who had been kind and dependable. There was no jealousy, just acknowledgement of the roads they took. At one point, Clara said, "I used to think you stopped loving me." Thomas shook his head. "Never. I just didn't know how to carry it without dropping everything else." Her eyes softened. "We were young," she said, "and young people think silence is strength." Before she left, she touched his hand. "Don't disappear again," she said. "I won't," he promised. And this time he meant it. That afternoon, Thomas drove to David's house. His hands trembled more now than they had at the diner. His grandson answered the door. "Grandpa." David appeared behind him, surprised, guarded. Thomas didn't wait for comfort. "I owe you an apology," he said. David crossed his arms slightly. "For what?" "For thinking silence protects people." David's jaw tightened. "You think one apology fixes 30 years? Thomas shook his head. "No, but it's a start." He took a breath. "I pushed someone away once because I thought I was sparing her pain. I nearly did. The same thing with you." David's expression shifted. "You mean Mom?" "Yes," Thomas said. "And you?" He told him about Clara, about the letter, about fear disguised as strength. "I didn't talk about the war because I thought it made me weak," Thomas said. "But not talking made me distant, and distance hurts more." For a long moment, David said nothing. Then he asked quietly, "Why didn't you ever trust me with it?" Thomas felt the question fully. "I didn't know how." That honesty broke something open. David stepped forward. "Not dramatically, just enough. We can start now," he said. And they did. Clara returned to Columbus a week later. Before she left, she met Thomas one last time at the diner. They didn't speak about lost decades like something stolen. They spoke about what remained. "We don't get to redo it," Clara said gently. "No," Thomas agreed, "but we get to finish it better." They exchanged phone numbers, actual plans, no more unsent letters. As she walked out, she turned back. "Next time," she said with a small smile, "don't wait half a century." Thomas laughed. "I've wasted enough time." At 78 years old, Thomas Grayson learned something he wished he had known at 20. Love does not require perfection, it requires presence. Silence is not strength, it is fear wearing a uniform. That winter, Thomas framed a letter he never mailed, not as a symbol of regret, but as a reminder. On Sunday afternoons, his grandson sits beside him while he tells stories about gas stations, about diners, about blue ribbons and yellow carnations, and sometimes about the importance of saying what you feel before pride steals the chance. Because time moves quietly, and if you're lucky, it gives you one more opportunity to speak.